All right, so we're going to change gears a little bit and just get back to kind of talking about SMART goals and talking about next steps with that in your IDP. My name is Kirby Livingston. I'm a graduate student in ELPA, Educational Leadership and Policy Analysis. And just to give you some context, some of my career goals, working in higher education either as an administrator or potentially teaching as well. So this is what we're going to talk about. A couple of the SMART goals that I went through just to get a little bit more concrete. Kind of review what makes a goal SMART, and then also how to find resources on campus to help you work towards achieving those goals. So the first goal, this was kind of early on in my career here. I was trying to find different assistantships on campus. I didn't have funding, and I was kind of running into some issues with interviewing. I felt like it was a skill that I could really use a lot of help on. So DiscoverPD, which Amy mentioned before, is one tool that you can use to find resources to help you, whatever the goal is. So my goal was to improve my interviewing skills. And I apologize, the way they're phrased at the top, it's going to be in more detail in your actual IDP. But you can kind of see some of the ways that this is a SMART goal. So in terms of specific, I wanted to improve specific skills, like how I was able to answer certain types of questions, like behavioral questions. Is it measurable? This was a challenging one with this. So not every goal is going to be perfectly SMART. Like, you're not going to be able to necessarily measure everything the way you want to, especially when with interviewing, if maybe it doesn't go that well, you might just never hear. So it's tough to get feedback that way. Attainable, I think that doing interviews is going to be important for any job. So it's important that it be considered attainable. Definitely relevant. I needed to get funding. Otherwise, I was probably going to have to take a semester off or something. And then I had some interviews coming up when I first had this goal, so it was definitely time-bound. So one tool you can use on DiscoverPD, there's something where you can do an assessment and go through your skills, and that's one way to find out opportunities and resources for working on your skills. But another thing is you're able to just search all opportunities through the database there. So basically, anything that you're trying to improve, once you create your IDP and you have some goals, now the next step is, what steps am I actually going to take? What's my plan for meeting those goals? So DiscoverPD is something that can help you do that. With the search all opportunities, you can see right there, it should be pretty easy to find. You can just type your keywords into there, and I definitely recommend trying multiple keywords. You might find really different opportunities depending on what you search. So when I first searched this, these are a couple of the resources that I found. There's this idea about, job search strategies is a workshop that we run through the graduate school, which is really helpful. We just had it a few weeks ago, and it's also online, so you can go back and look at that if you weren't able to make it to the in-person workshop. And the same goes for the interviewing for faculty positions. So these are two workshops that the graduate school runs that would definitely help me towards my career goals, or my SMART goals rather. And I actually have, since I work for the graduate school now, been able to attend both of these workshops and definitely feel like I've improved. Another thing you can do with DiscoverPD is, you probably see these little hearts right here. You can just, you can favorite different opportunities or resources, and then you're able to come back to those at a later time. So, if you just have a couple minutes, search some resources, favorite a couple things, and you can come back to it whenever you want. So this was, job search strategies. Like, a lot of our resources are available online, so if you can't make it to in-person workshops, that doesn't mean you can't benefit from that. The same goes for interviewing for faculty positions. So my second goal was grant writing. So I figure if I want to work in higher education, whether it's as a professor or for a different center on campus, I'm going to need to learn how to write grants. So I felt like this is very specific, measurable. It's a lot easier to get feedback on something like a grant than it is for interviewing, so that's a lot easier. Attainable, I feel like probably anyone who gets to graduate school is going to be fairly confident in some of their writing skills. So it was just taking that and transferring it to a different genre of writing. Definitely relevant, as I discussed, and then at the time I was looking for grants to apply to in that year. Again, similar here, I actually found really different resources. I searched grant writing, found a couple things, but then when I typed in funding, there was a lot more opportunities. And then third, I was able to improve my interviewing. I ended up getting a teaching assistantship soon after that. And one of the things I really wanted to work on was being a more inclusive teacher for, whether it's culturally or basically like any of the identities my students have. I wanted to be able to be inclusive with my teaching style. And that was something that I felt like I needed more professional development with. So I felt like it was a specific type of teaching that I wanted to improve on. And, it was relevant because I was teaching at the time and I could apply these skills right away during that semester. So a little shout out to Eric. I ended up finding some really good resources through Delta to be able to improve my teaching. I participated in a half semester course for teaching assistants that was really great. They have an inclusive teaching workshop as well that I participated in. And there's also some, like here you can see, if you're not able to get to those workshops, they have some different online materials that are also really helpful. And then we've already touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to go into a little bit more. This is something that helped me when I was developing my IDP. I kind of had a little bit trouble getting going. And the tool that they have on ImaginePhD was really helpful for that. It's kind of like minimal work. And I have a little, so one thing that ImaginePhD has, they also have an assessment, but they do skills, interests, and values, which I feel like is really important. I think your comment earlier really spoke to values are also important when you're thinking about your goals. So that might be a reason you might talk to your friends or your partners, because it's not just all about your skills when it comes to your job. It's also values are really important. So this can be a nice thing to do and doesn't take very long. And then the IDP tool on ImaginePhD is also really great. You can kind of see here a little bit, there's some pre-populated goals. The list goes way down. These are just goals that a lot of graduate students might have. And through that, you kind of just drag and drop them into the calendar here. And it's a really easy way to, without really having to generate that much, you can start to come up with your IDP. And it's a really good starting place. So I've kind of fleshed this out a little bit more since then, but this was where I started, and it was a really accessible way for me to do that. And this tool, I would say, regardless of what discipline you're in, a lot of these goals are going to be similar. So this might be something that's valuable for STEM as well as social sciences and humanities.